Hi there, advanced math. I'm going to show you one last subtraction strat today called add the opposite. The symbols strategy and the number line strategy were both very visual. If you don't love the visual strategies and you just like the do the math strategies, this is going to be the one for you. So go ahead and make this the title of your last subtraction strategy page and close your notebook up, and you can open it up and write when we get to the we do. Alright, so before I get to my connect page, the number line strategy, if you'll remember when we added with number lines, we did start, move, end. And when we subtracted, we really did the same thing, except we knew the end and we knew the move. And instead of trying to figure out where we end, we tried to figure out where we would have started. So the add and the subtract strategies were kind of the same thing in reverse with the number line, and that's going to be the same thing here. It's sort of a do the opposite thing of addition strategy here today called add the opposite. Alright, so I want to, before I get to doing some examples of it, I want you to notice some things. I've written an addition problem and a very similar subtraction problem over here. Addition problem, very similar subtraction problem. And what I want you to, I'm going to work these, and you're going to notice a pattern real quick. So 5 plus negative 7, when we add, the way we did that was we wrote the symbols all down. And we made 0 pairs. So 5 additions and 5 subtractions were made a 0. And then we ended up with 2 negatives, so this was negative 2. When we did subtraction the other way, subtraction, this is a similar problem, 5 and 7. Kind of some different sign stuff going on here. We would have done this. We would have drawn the 5. And we want to take away 7. I only have 5 to take away. So I added those 0 pairs. I only need 2, I think, right? If I add 2 0 pairs, then I can take away positive 7. And I ended up again with negative 2. 3 plus negative 5, I'm going to go fast because I know you know how to do this. Alright, 3 zeros is negative 2. And 3 minus 5, similar problem, same numbers, just some sign and operation differences, was 3, take away 5. Negative 2. Negative 2 plus 6. 2 pairs. Get 4. Negative 2 minus negative 6. 1, 2. Need to take away 4. I need 4 more. Get 4. And same thing, negative 4 plus negative 2 is negative 6. And negative 4 minus 2 is also negative 6. So what you can see is I can take an addition problem, and there is a subtraction problem that has a very, 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 very similar answer to it. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to learn a strategy that says, well, whenever you have a subtraction problem like 5 minus 7, you can turn it into a problem where you add the opposite and get the same answer. I can take 5 minus 7, and instead of subtracting, I can add. But instead of adding that number, I just add the opposite number, and I get the same answer. I get the same thing. Same thing here. I can start with 3, and instead of subtracting 5, I can add the opposite and get the same answer. Negative 2 minus negative 6 looks very confusing, but if I want, I can get the same answer by, instead of subtracting, adding the opposite. Instead of negative 6, positive 6, and I'll get the same answer. One more time. add the opposite. Instead of subtracting 2, I could just add the opposite and get the same answer. So it's all, it's kind of a trick. I often don't like to show you tricks, but this is a pretty good one. And it's really reliable, and you're going to get to a point in some really advanced math at some point where you pretty much have to do this. Like you'll reach a point which you hardly ever subtract again in math. You always just add the opposite instead. And so I want to make sure you know that strategy because we're going to rely on it a lot in the future. So let me show you how to do it. I'll just do some examples where that's all I do. So what I'm going to do when I see -3 minus 7, if I don't want to use my other strategies, and I need you to know this strategy anyway, is I can just change that to a problem. Whenever I see subtraction, I can just add the opposite. And this problem would have the same answer. And the reason I like to do that is addition's just easier to do. I mean, it's easier. The negative numbers, you guys are much better at just looking at an addition problem and knowing the answer than you are at looking at a subtraction problem and just knowing the answer. So it's a neat strategy. Add the opposite. All right, one more with whole numbers. I can look 10 minus -6. I'm going to make that a hashtag, right? Hashtag add the opposite. Add the opposite. And I'm just going to change that to an addition problem with the same answer. 10, add, opposite. I mean, that's sure easy. And it gets me my answer very quickly. Pretty nice, huh? This is especially nice when you get to decimal problems, because subtracting with the decimals is even more challenging sometimes than adding with the decimals. So if I add the opposite, I'm going to change that. The first number doesn't change, right? I keep my first number exactly what it is, and then the rest changes. I'm going to instead add the opposite, and that's not as hard to do. I probably need a number line to do that, even after I add. That's fine. I'd rather do that. I'm going to need a big number line, I think. So let's see. I'm going to need more space on the negative side. It's going to be a slightly positive answer. It's going to be around 2. So let me give myself more space in the negative. Going to have to cross 0. Good practice for me. So I'm going to start at -6 6/10. And I'm going to go 1 to -5 6/10. 2 to -4 6/10. 3 to -3 6/10. 4 to -2 6/10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to -1 6/10. And then -0 6/10. And this is where I have to be careful. This is where I have to cross 0. When you cross 0, don't mess up. I'm not going to go to +6/10. I'm only going to go to +4/10. If you think about going 10/10, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm not going to cross over to 6/10. I'm going to cross over to 4/10. And I'm going to have it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got to go one more. That's going to take me to 1 4/10. And then another 8/10. I think instead of going 8/10, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go a whole to 2 4/10. And then back 2/10. I went too far. I went 9, so I'm going to go back 2/10 to give back 2 of those, and I'm going to end up at 2 2/10. Whew. I know some of you have figured out how to do that without the number line. I use the number line. All right, open up your math notebook, please, and let's do some quick examples together. All right, so my strategy today is I'm going to look at these, and I'm just not going to subtract. I'm going to add the opposite instead. So I'm just going to turn that into an add the opposite question. Now don't make a mistake with your first number. That's a big mistake you can make. First number stays. I'm adding the opposite on the second number. First number stays just as it was. So I'm going to do 5, and instead of minus -8, I'm going to add the opposite, and that's super easy. Nice. All right, same thing here. I'm going to add the opposite. So I'm going to keep my first number, but instead of subtracting 9, I'm going to add the opposite of 9. And I can do that in my head. You probably can too. -1. That's why I like add the opposite so much. Addition, you guys, it's just not as hard for me to do in my head. I can see the symbols and just figure out the answer pretty easily. So. All right, and particularly helpful with decimals. This was harder, pretty tough to do with decimals. But if I add the opposite instead, hashtag ATL, I've got -6 8/10 plus 10 1/10. And if you can do that without a number line, you don't have to. I'm going to just so you remember how to do that. Make sure I do it with a number line. Could have picked smaller numbers, huh? So let's see, that's going to be around 3 or 4, I think. So I'll put 0 here. All right, here I go. Start, move, end. So I'm going to start. 6 8/10 is pretty close to -7. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now I'm going to stop for a second because I have to cross 0. So I'm at -0 8/10. When I cross 0 with my 7th jump, I'll be at 2/10, not 8/10. 2/10. And now I can do 8, 9, 10. Puts me at 3 2/10. And I've got to do my 1/10 extra. And I would end at 3 3/10. All right. That, my friends, is the add the opposite strategy. So you've got the symbol strategy, you've got the number line strategy, and now you've got the add the opposite strategy, which again, especially when they're whole numbers, takes no drawing, which some of you might enjoy. So that gets you done with those if you just want to crunch the numbers pretty fast. If this made sense to you, you're all set until the U-Dos tomorrow. If you need to go back and watch any examples again to understand it better, please do. And I can't wait to see you tomorrow.